Welcome to Hey That's Me, a commentary podcast. I'm Patrick Kottner.
I am Brian Lynch.
Maybe the coolest episode today.
I think we've done a ton of cool ones. This is definitely
one of the coolest.
I never thought we'd get this guy.
Yeah,
because I've seen his name and his work in like every making of book that I've ever read, and I've read a lot.
We're doing Who Framed Roger Rabbit with Dave Barclay, puppeteer extraordinaire.
Yeah,
lead puppeteer, chief puppeteer on Who Framed Roger Rabbit,
but also the co-Yoda
with
Frank Oz.
Jabba the Hutt has worked on literally almost any movie that has puppetry,
including Muppets.
Yeah, Muppets, Dark Crystal, Labyrinth. Like we talk about all of these things with him today.
We hit everything. We did really good. We got lost in space.
Yes, we did. You talked about Cool World, and he didn't even work on Cool World.
He didn't work on Cool World. There is a Cool World drop, which, by the way, I do like that movie, and it's my second favorite soundtrack of all time. But he did not react.
This podcast, in case this is the first one that you're listening to, we do audio commentaries on movies and TV shows with people who worked on them but never got to do commentaries on them. And this one specifically, he remembers everything.
He remembers the material of like the rope,
yes,
or like the string that he used. Like he was great. This is a very cool podcast. It's a very good episode for
a very good podcast
for people that are into movie making.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
I think we should just get right into it.
Let's get right into it.
We're going to count down from 3 and then say go. Have your movie synced up if you want, or just listen to it like a podcast. And on go, press play.
Let's do it.
Here we go.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, here we are. We're watching Roger Rabbit. I'm Patrick Kottner.
I'm Brian Lynch. This is an exciting episode.
Who's our guest today?
Your guest today is Dave Barclay, puppeteer from Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Yes, I was the chief puppeteer.
This is very exciting.
It's safe to say, of the three of us, Dave, you've worked on this movie the most.
Yes, I believe so. I don't remember seeing you there.
No, we were pretty young.
No,
I was not born yet.
Right.
So
I saw in the theater without my parents, so I was old enough to do that.
Wow.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, how did this come about for you? Because you had a long career before this even happened.
Yeah, I'd had a lot of good movies. This came through producer Robert Watts.
Oh, sure.
And Robert had produced the Star Wars films, and I worked on Empire and on Return of the Jedi. Mm-hmm. And so he called me up and saying, well, there may be a day or two's work for you on this new film we're doing, Roger Rabbit. And we want to integrate cartoon characters with the real world. It's going to be a live-action film with cartoons added. And, of course, back in the day when we made this was all pre-computers. So everything had to be done in camera. And so that was how I got involved. I got a call from Robert Watts. I met George Gibbs, who was the special effects supervisor, doing all the practical effects, British guy. And I'd worked with him on Labyrinth a year or so before. So I knew George, and George knew me, and I knew a number of the crew. So it was, it seemed a logical step for me to be involved.
And how many days did the 1 to 2 days turn into?
The entire movie.
Yes.
We had 6 puppeteers on every single day for every shoot day, and that ramped up at certain days to 17 puppeteers.
How long was the shoot?
The shoot was a lot longer than they originally reckoned. It took a lot longer than they originally. I think Robert Watts was saying, "Oh well, the schedule is 6 weeks." And I say, "You're no way you're shooting this in 6 weeks." And he goes, "Yeah, okay." So I think we finished May. So we started in January. So it was like 5 months. It was a long run.
And is that because they were underestimating how long the puppeteering would take, or just the tech in general, or why?
Just the tech in general, and also because everybody would want to do the very best. Mm-hmm. The entire crew wanted the very best for this film. And,
I mean, you can tell.
Yeah, and just like Richard Williams, we're watching this animation. He was phenomenal, and he was there a lot of the time. And certainly we had Ken Ralston, and we had Scott Farrar from ILM, and then we had Don Hahn from Disney as animation people. So we had all these genius people explaining exactly what they needed to make all of this interaction work. And
it really was. It was everyone at the top of their game, and the people at the top of the field on top of that too. So it like you have everyone firing on all cylinders, and that is kind of why this movie works so well, because this movie could easily not work.
Like Cool World.
Like, yeah. But there's a bunch of movies like that where you're like, this is really good still, but it's not Roger Rabbit.
Well, on every level, it works.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, Richard Williams was such an important part of the animation, the design, and everything. But again, Bob Zemeckis, his desire to make this absolutely flawless was just brilliant. I mean, he really seemed to appreciate every person on the crew and understood everybody's position and job and how much effort they were putting into making this work. And it really was a complete team effort that brought all this to life.
Yeah. What was your first meeting with Zemeckis like?
Great. I mean, initially I had worked, as I say, with Robert Watts and I had just come in. That was me.
So you worked with Joel Silver?
Worked with Joel Silver, yes. So
how was he? Was he fun?
He was great. This wasn't the first shot. This is the first live action interaction shot of the movie, but it wasn't the first shot that we shot. This was quite a ways down the actual schedule. And so so my task was to interact with Joel and to we had to open the door, of course, for the fridge. And then I think there's Roger comes across the floor. Oh, yeah. So he comes and grabs the coat, I think. So
was that on strings, or how would you move her dress? Okay.
Well, I think the dress was an air cylinder, so that it would just blow. Cool. And then, but this was strings on where he grabs that strings, and then what we had to do so that after he grabs it the second time, he snaps the string. So
oh wow.
So that we can get off. So yeah, we did all those sort of things where we would do whatever was needed. So
sure. That's what this whole thing's going to be. Is going to be like, how'd you do that?
How'd you do that?
Yeah.
How was this?
Yeah. So that was how that shot was done, just by an invisible black Dacron thread that we would pull, and so
that's amazing. Can we talk about Robert Watts a little bit? Because all the Star Wars movies, all the Indiana Jones movies, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like the guy, he worked in 2001, I think, too.
Yes, I think he did. Yes.
How was he as a producer for you guys? What did he bring to the table that you were impressed by?
Oh, he was wonderful. He was very straightforward. I did certain things for him on when Yoda wasn't working properly. He asked me to sort of fix him on Empire and Jedi, and I did. So I got the offer to puppeteer Jabba just as an offer. I didn't have to audition.
That's amazing.
Wow.
Would I like to be chief puppeteer for Jabba?
Yeah.
And I said yes, please. So
What part of Jabba is chief puppeteer? Because
chief puppeteer was I was performing his right hand.
okay.
I also created his voice on set, which is this voice you're hearing, not the actual one that made it to the movie. So that the actors could react with Jabba, and then I did his lip sync with his jaw with my left hand. So I reached under his throat and did that. And then next to me was my good friend Toby Philpott, and he did the left hand, the head movement, and the tongue. So he got to do the tongue.
And was Mike Edmonds was in the tail? Is that right?
Mike Edmonds was in the mechanical tail, yes, for some of the shots. So, and then when the tail is curled round, there was just a tiny tip in the end, and that was often puppeteered by Tim Rose, who did Admiral Akbar and also Salacious Crumbs.
Yeah. So. Not to go off on a Jabba tangent, were you sealed in there?
We weren't, technically. The original plan was to seal us in, take the head off.
Yeah.
We climbed through the neck and then put the head down, but that took forever. So I suggested we cut a hole under the Jabba, because he had like a big metal turntable that he could move so we could rotate the body. So I said, cut a hole in the middle of that turntable. We can climb up from inside and then climb back out again when we needed to. So that's how we got in and out of Jabba.
Did it smell terrible?
No, it didn't. No, we did try to bathe.
Sure. Right. But you would think, you guys all being in that close proximity and on that set, there's so many guys just sweating in suits that set would smell.
Also, he's eating like space frogs.
That's true. He's eating frogs too. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, it was okay because it started off being very hot, but they actually provided us with a little small air conditioning unit, which had a little hose, and I set the hose so there was just enough air to get in and give us enough air so we could breathe without making it too cold.
Of course.
So,
How many days do you think you were in Jabba?
I think we were only in Jabba for about 15, 16 days.
2 weeks of Jabba.
That's still a lot. Yeah.
And so, but yeah, we would get in at 8:30 in the morning,
Right.
and work until lunchtime, get out for lunch, and then back in and work till we wrapped. Often at 8 o'clock-ish or something like that. So,
Is there anything that you think would have made him easier if you were using him today? Is there tech that has evolved since 1982 or whatever that you think would have helped?
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not sure, to be honest.
Okay.
I think because they went to servo controls, servo eye, so that the guys, so John Coppinger and Bob Keane, could be outside to look at the eye movements and the sneers and everything. And I don't know if the new technology you could. I mean, I have created data gloves, special puppeteer data gloves, which allow me to control loads and loads of servos. So we could probably up the expressions and we could give him more range of movements these days. But I think the basic principle, I think, is sound. Is the understructure that's supported by itself with foam latex skin, which just gives him that real life look. I mean, some people use silicons these days, but I don't think silicon's appropriate for Jabba, and it would weigh a ton. So, I mean, he weighed a ton anyway. So.
Yeah. The bike that went by.
Yes.
Was that marionette or
No, what they did is they put sand in the wheels, so it basically stands up, and they just pushed it. This was actually filmed here in LA.
Okay.
This was one of the little bits that I wasn't involved with because all the studio stuff was shot in Elstree Studios in London and all the local stuff, but this was actually shot here in Los Angeles.
just because they wanted the shot right here?
Yeah, because they needed the exteriors. So, and so this is some of the very first stuff that they filmed.
I don't know what studio that is. Do you? Either of you?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
I did know.
I'd
I
have to
can't
look it up,
remember.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it looks familiar. It looks like something that I've driven by 100 times. You
Yes.
know? And now we're back at Elstree, or we're still
No,
in LA?
no. This is still in LA.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
So with the trolley cars and everything. So yeah.
Wow.
This will be. Yeah. So
That's amazing.
downtown.
Should we talk about Robert Hoskins for a little while?
Bob Hoskins.
I like
yeah.
Bob
Hoskins.
Yeah.
He's one of the, I mean, probably the best at working with something that's not there in movies, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the best. Him, Brendan Fraser, Will Forte is great.
Yeah.
So, but yes, Bob was absolutely amazing, and this was before any computer graphics or anything. So today you could put like a ping pong ball and then have it, or a golf ball, tennis ball. You could have that then painted out.
Yeah.
But you couldn't paint anything out on this. This had to be done all in camera. So so he had to remember everything. Now we're in London. This is the Ink and Paint Club that's in the UK. This was built in Elstree Studios.
How long did it take him to get used to it?
Yeah, the learning curve.
Yeah.
He was very fast. You can see here Paul Springer, who plays the character Augie. He's also the mime coach, and so he went through with Bob to do some basic mime. But Bob was already there, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So Paul didn't have to do much at all. Bob was already just phenomenal at it. I mean, just whether it was a natural or how he did it, or whether he'd spent a massive amount of time before we turned up. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was just amazing.
Yeah.
He was amazing. And so he'd have all these multiple things, eye lines, practical things he had to do. Because, of course, when we're filming, the cartoons aren't there. So he's got to remember where they all are, as well as act and do his own stuff.
Yeah.
So he was just brilliant.
Were you the one who would have the life-size Roger doll?
Yes.
Was that a you thing, or was that someone else would do that?
Well, I mean, it would vary, but yes, I did it a lot. We did weasels. We would just, again, they used that so that they could see the scale of Roger and all the other Toon characters. So we'd film a sequence with just the Roger, the rubber Rogers. And so there's a whole film of just that.
amazing.
Without any of the animation.
Release it. Disney, release it, you cowards. Come on.
And so that would be fascinating to see.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's, so it was, it was an amazing time, and he was just absolutely brilliant.
That's great.
Charles Fleischer was also on set.
Charles Fleischer was on set doing the voice, and he insisted in having a costume made for him, so everybody knew he was Roger Rabbit.
Oh, he was dressed as Roger Rabbit.
He was dressed as Roger Rabbit, which certainly all the British people thought he was nuts.
I'm sure they loved it. I'm sure that crew loved it.
Yeah, it's there because the British crew were again top of their game.
Totally,
they were the best people you could possibly find.
Yeah,
and so they'd seen everything, so they just thought, "Come on."
Do you think the crews in London had changed from the time of like Empire and the first Star Wars to then? Because I know when George was working on the first Star Wars, the crews were not happy with a lot of the stuff he was doing. It was a difficult shoot, and I'm wondering if things got easier in that general world. That's a weird question, but
right. I don't know. I think it was very much the same for my experience from Empire.
Yeah.
I wasn't on New Hope. I wasn't on the original Star Wars, but my experience from Empire is that what I'd heard is that the crew again were top of their game on the original Star Wars, and I'd heard that George would say, "Oh, we're going to put the camera over here and do this," and the director of photography and first assistant said, "No, son, you're not putting it there. It's going over here." So they were brilliant, and they steered George into creating this film. So they couldn't see it. They couldn't see that this was going to work.
Yeah.
So.
Do you find UK crews to be different from US crews?
Probably only that they probably swear a bit more, and there's more practical jokes. Well, certainly back in the day, it was full of practical jokes all the time. So, and I did this. This was the weasel trays, the penguin waiter trays, and so we basically the entire set is raised 6 feet off the ground. So we've got 6 feet below the actual set, and then there are these channels that the octopus bartender. This was the very first problem solving I had to come up with for George Gibbs. How are we going to make all these 8 tentacles move by themselves? And that actually got me the job.
How did you end up doing
what was
that?
your solution?
Right. Well, the cocktail shaker is on strings, but it's got strings that connect to the top of it going up to elastics, and then 2 strings going below the desk to a T-bar. So you pull against the elastic, you can bring the cocktail shaker down and it will freeze. And you can move it up and it will freeze because you're fighting the elastics from above.
The tension, yeah.
And then you can move it left and right. You can twist it left and right. So it can rock and it can bounce and it can move around. And if you want to, you can just freeze it, absolutely stop and freeze it. So so this was a nice rig that, and that I think Mike Quinn performed that. And then we had there was a glass and a bottle where the octopus poured some gin into a glass and gave it to one of the customers, and that was a combination of just great skill and so it was me doing the tray and the menu. I've got that menu.
Wow.
and then later as we're going through this, Bob says he wants a scotch on the rocks, and I said, well, shouldn't it have like actual rocks in it?
Of course.
And they go, brilliant. So Bob Zemeckis gets someone to go out to the back lot, pick up a rock, put it in, and they filmed it. And that was my little suggestion.
That's amazing.
So that was the you weren't feeling that you had to stick in your job and not say a word and not be part of it. Everybody, and if they didn't like it, they said, no, that's not going to work. So, but they said, no, that's great. So.
Wow. So are they on? We stopped talking about the waiters really quick. Are they on poles or what? You're underneath.
They're on poles, so it's under the floor.
Yeah,
and they've got an angle coming out from the tray and then goes straight down. And what basically they drew the penguins over the rigs. Yeah, so there's my gag with the rocks.
Amazing.
Tunes, so and that was. And I felt so delighted to actually be part of contributing.
Yeah.
Again, and so again, anytime you see like her tray move, that they will all be puppeteers. And so we had, I think, 17 puppeteers for doing the penguin waiter trays. And they had a mechanism as well, so that the trays could raise and lower separately to the actual pole that they were mounted to.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you think that the 80s in the UK was the best time to be a puppeteer?
I think it probably was.
It feels like it.
It really
so
was.
many movies were shot over there.
Yeah, and I just happened to be lucky to be part of that
Yeah.
that initial crew, and and also at this point, I'd done quite a few movies and getting a bit of a reputation, which was wonderful.
Yeah.
And this was so much of this was we would have to work it out on the spot and work out how we're going to do it. Some of it we could pre-rehearse, pre-rig. I played the drums for for the Crow, and we did second unit. We did the entire song on the drums, and they wanted every drumstick and hi-hat cymbal and all that to be spot on. I mean, I did play drums when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
But these are all on rods and like really hard to control. But yeah, so it's like, and he said, "Oh, you missed one beat." And I said, "Well, you probably won't actually spend the entire sequence on the drummer." And they said, "No, yeah, point taken. Okay, okay." So it's like, but yeah, that was fun. So,
what was the thing in this movie that you were the most nervous about, or the thing that you were like, "I don't know if we can do this"? Was there anything?
I don't think so. I think
That's great. That's a great answer.
I don't think so. I think what it was like, the initial biggest pre-rig and build. I mean, this was a combination of strings, puppeteer friend Sue Dacre, and then a body double who did the hands. So they're actual real hands that they are, and they did a split screen to get rid of the actress.
Oh wow!
And then, so that's a real complicated multiple rig thing. And then I think she grabs his tie, and that's a combination of like a string rig as well as the actress pulling on it as well. So yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that would be an actress's hand.
Yeah.
And
was there any room for ad-libbing, or was that done in the rehearsal period? And then
oh no, I mean we did all the time, and Bob did all the time, and that's why the on the rocks came in. So, and he was amazing.
He was funny in it.
He's brilliant in it. Stubby K. And I said, I complimented him on his performance, and he said, "Oh no, I said, no, you did. It's really beautiful." So I said, "Oh, thank you." So
and the costumes too are amazing.
Oh yeah,
there's just every detail of this movie it feels so lived in a way that's works so much to its advantage.
Yeah, and now I can see the actual sets themselves rather than what we're watching. I can see everything. So, and it's just crazy because I think we filmed this in 1987. So it's getting on 40 years ago.
Are you able to enjoy movies that you worked on still, or are all you thinking about is like, oh, this was a Tuesday and it was such a pain and it was pouring? Like,
it does vary. Sometimes, yes. And then Stuart Fell did this stunt, which was did all these stunts for Bob. But Bob did a hell of a lot. He really did. So. Yeah, I mean, watching films that I've worked on, it does change your perspective, and it's I sometimes try to step back and not really watch it as the person who worked on it. Try and watch it as a punter, as somebody who's going to see the film, but it's difficult. It is difficult because something like this, there's so many memories. And just working again, like just seeing the smoke coming out. And I know Peter Davey, who was pouring that in at the time, So it's just all the little tiny details that no one would ever be aware of.
Yeah. Your parents were puppeteers too.
Yes, my parents were. They originally were actors. They met at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art, RADA, in London. And got married, and then a few years later they wanted to work together, and so they set up a puppet company, which went nuts. I mean, it was non-stop from that point onwards.
Did you ever get to bring them to a set for anything?
I did. I brought my father to Roger Rabbit. He worked on this film. I was the puppet supervisor, and I was able to employ my dad.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
So now this is a mechanical rig, I think. That was a robotic rig and you can kind of see that with the arm.
Sure.
And then,
Huh.
so that was a rig that I think the special effects team with George Gibbs had done. And this is a really interesting thing where you notice the left hand, there's a little bit of this slight shaking.
Yeah.
And they so and that was one of the things we had to try and not focus on, so that typically with an animated character they can make a big gesture and then do a freeze. But if we froze and they held any props, you would see the skating over the hands, and there's a little bit of that here. So the idea is to try and keep it moving very slightly so you can't see it, because they didn't have computer technology where you could lock and track.
Yeah. Was that also the rig when he's pulling the pictures?
No, that would just be a pair of hands.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
sometimes it's the easiest thing, I guess,
well,
right?
I always tried to do everything that was the easiest thing. Yeah. So these were lots of air mortars and stuff. So
wow.
Yeah, and then just moving the table. So we're all under the table, moving all that stuff. So.
Did you guys have rehearsal time for this, or like what is your build schedule on something like this?
Well, the build schedule, I think we had a couple of weeks to pre-rig everything, and then it was just ongoing.
Yeah.
So we would have to. Some days we were less busy, and so we'd be pre-rigging, and every once in a while, like for one particular time, we came in the morning and Bob Zemeckis had completely rewritten the practical stuff of what we were going to do. We weren't really going to work that day, and he said, "Oh, I've got a little puppet show for you guys," you know. So, and he said we wanted to do all this and this and this. I said, and typically what would happen is we'd block it through, we'd find out what he wanted, and then we'd have half an hour to rig stuff while they were lighting. Wow. So typically we'd have half an hour to get
an hour.
Yeah,
that's nothing.
Yeah. And this was, again, beautiful special effects rig. And this is England.
Is this just the backlot on L Street?
No, this is, I think, White City.
Oh, wow. Oh, so it's a real
it's a real location,
building.
a real building. And so, yeah, and it was in the middle of winter and it was freezing, literally. So,
Do you remember the first time you saw this?
Saw the crew screening, yes. Yeah, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But I mean, I got to see rushes every day, so I got to see all the shots.
Right.
Not everybody does get to see rushes, but just to make sure that all the rigs and all the stuff was working. So this was one of the more complicated sequences, and one of the first things that we filmed actually with Bob Hoskins. And this is all on set in Elstree Studios. And they wanted all the beds and all the stuff to be in one sequence. So so we had to work out that when he first sees Roger, we have to work out how we could do all of that in one master shot. And I said, well, surely it's all going to be cut up into sequences and we could just focus on each part of the sequence. No, they wanted it all in one master shot so that they could play it, and they wanted Roger and all the effects to happen in that one master shot. So that was quite tricky. A bit later on, we were able to just focus on the specific shots and make those work. But right early on, I guess they wanted to prove that it could be done. Wow. So yeah.
Wow.
So this was we spent a lot of time in this set, and we cut holes in everything. We put strings on everything. And
have you ever been on a set where someone fell into one of the holes? It's a very dumb question, but it feels like it must happen.
Yeah, I don't really think so. And I haven't been around. I know at the end of Empire, when we had the crew screen, not crew screening, we had the wrap party.
Oh, sure.
Someone fell into the swamp on the Dagobah swamp, which they had obviously drunk too much. So.
But Yoda just lifted him out. It's fine.
Yeah, no, I think the smell lifted him out. It really, really got quite bad by that point.
I was going to say, that must have been rancid by the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. When you're making this movie, are you like, this is going to be great, or how do you feel about it at the time, like while you're on set?
Oh, we knew this was going to be amazing. Yeah. No, we knew it was. I mean, again, I was lucky. I was after my first meeting with George Gibbs, where he showed me the Octopus Bartender
Yeah.
storyboard, and then said, and I worked out on the spot how to do the 8 arms. He said, great. Here's the script. So I was instantly given a script. So I got to read the whole thing, and I thought, oh no, this is excellent. This is really, really good. And this is going to be a fantastic movie.
We of course have Admiral Mahdi there from the first
I was
Star
just gonna
Wars.
say.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's got to be a good feeling though when you're like, I know I'm working on something that's going to be good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bob Hoskins, he was a Londoner. He spoke like that normally, and then he would turn on his accent for doing Eddie. So when we were speaking to him, he was just like one of the London guys.
Amazing.
Oh, he didn't have to do it all day. The no accent or the American accent.
Oh yeah, no, he only did it when we were filming, and
wow.
when he was speaking about everything, he would say, "Are we filming? Or are we fucking about?" Filming was recording, and fucking about was rehearsing.
Oh.
So that was him. So
I really like you have a book out. We should mention it's called My Life with Animatronics. Movies, Puppets, and Beyond. It's great. People should check it out. But you talk about how you worked with him again after this. It was an awards show. Is that right?
That's right. Yes,
Yeah.
there was a thing after Roger Rabbit where the BBC were doing Comic Relief, which was to raise funds for children. And so lots of celebrities would go and for free do like skits and little either performances, and then they would encourage people to send money in and support it all. And so we did one with Bob Hoskins. He was he didn't know we were going to be there, but we had 2 wolf puppets, and he was he played with the 2 wolf puppets, and it was brilliant. It was so
great.
good to see him. And he said, "Oh, I didn't know you guys were going to be here." So it was great. He was so lovely.
That's great. It is wild that this movie goes so long before introducing. Like, we haven't really seen Roger.
No.
We haven't seen Judge Doom. Like,
No.
it goes so long before anyone really shows up.
Yeah.
Which is amazing because you don't think of that when you think of the movie. You're like, oh yeah, Roger's in the whole thing.
Yeah, that's
No.
true. Yeah. So this is actually this was an actual building. This isn't a set.
Oh wow.
This is an actual building, and the because it was taking so long to film, we actually had main unit and second unit working 24 hours a day. So main unit would start at 7 a.m. and they'd work through to 7 p.m. and then second unit would take over and carry on doing all the second unit's shots from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. and then main unit would come. So literally this stage, this set,
Yeah.
which was all dressed and all painted all the way through, this was being filmed on 24 hours a day.
Would you guys get, I don't want to say stuck on second unit, but would you guys get put on second unit sometimes, or were you primarily the main unit?
Well, I mean, primarily when we got to this point, we just decided to split the core team into 2 groups. So there was myself, Mike Quinn, and Christopher Leith. We were on main unit, and then we had Toby Philpott, Jeff Felix, and Ian Tregoning on second unit. But every once in a while, the rigs and the inventions of coming up with solutions, I needed to be there for second unit as well. So I'd work my 12 hours on main unit, carry on, do 12 hours on second unit, then pick back up and do my 12 hours on main unit again. And then I get a few hours kip, and then sometimes. So
Wow.
yeah, so it's I don't think HR would allow that these days, but
No.
this was England in the 80s.
Of course. Of course.
Do you go right to another project when this is done? Or do you rest for 2 years?
No. I think the next project after this was The Adventures of Baron Munchausen for Terry Gilliam.
Also a big movie.
Massive movie, absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
The car, I'm assuming the doors, you just had the doors to rig open, or
That actually was the effects guys. Yeah,
Okay.
they stuck some solenoids and triggers to open those, so that they would just open automatically, and they had someone lying in there triggering them, so it was all internal.
This scene is the stuff of nightmares, and you guys
Yes.
shouldn't have done it with the shoe murder.
Yeah.
How was Christopher Lee? Or Christopher Lee, Jesus, Christopher Lloyd.
Well, how was
Christopher
Christopher
How was
Lloyd.
Christopher Lee too, though?
Christopher Lloyd was wonderful, and again, he was doing his big speech up and down the freeway, and after that I said, "Oh, that was just amazing! Thank you. That was like so fantastic." And he said, "Oh well, thank you." So he was very nice,
That's great.
but he kind of tried to keep in character to a degree. He wasn't like laughing and joking in between, where Bob was definitely Bob Hoskins when he wasn't filming. So. But yeah, but he obviously, Chris had to have all the makeup on every day, so
Yeah. I guess it's probably
yeah. And then
Brian,
again,
Brian is not looking at the
haven't-
screen.
I-
Oh,
they
yeah,
had-
how would you do that?
they had to
Just
work
murder
out all
issue?
the smoke and everything, and then air cannons inside to move the water around, and then probably that's an oil smoke, and that would be not very nice. I don't think they allow you to use that in films anymore.
So you guys are working pretty close with the special effects guys too?
Yes,
'Cause
yeah.
it's a similar thing.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they were involved in so many of the shots, but I mean, most of the interaction was us. But this again, this is one with Baby Herman and his cigar. There's a little mechanical robotic arm that holds the real cigar. So that real cigar is there, and so the movement of the cigar and the arm, so it's quite thin, and they basically draw over where that mechanical arm is.
So with that arm, are you pre-setting what the movement is going to be, or are you doing it live?
It's doing live, and in fact,
Okay.
actually, it was one of the special effects guys that was controlling it because he built it around his arm. So. Yeah, but yeah, so he's shaking it around, but you can kind of see a little bit that there's the mechanical shake on there, which. But yeah, again, the whole idea is they didn't want the any prop to literally stand still. So we would do we brought out the newspaper. So. And so they're constantly moving the cigar, so you don't see the skating of the hands around the cigar. So.
Yeah. You said you stole the menu.
No, I didn't steal the menu. No,
Okay.
there was
Gifted.
there was a spare one that I had to rig and rehearse. So yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else that you have been gifted or been, that you can talk about?
Typically not. No, most of the stuff was built specifically for all of this. I think I had an early version of one of the newspapers. This one, Toon Kills Man, actually, and so I think I've got an early version of
cool.
that before it was finalised. But that's it. So
That's amazing.
yeah. So I think this might well be the first time we see Roger. And so this was, we had to be able to do all of this. Oh, no, I'm not sure. I haven't actually watched it in a long time.
Yeah, I think it's pretty soon.
Yeah, it's pretty soon. So,
What was the most difficult set for you?
most difficult.
Or
Probably the Ink and Paint Club. Yeah, that's probably the most, because it was most physically demanding. These were, all the sets were built for us 6 feet off the ground. So we were always able to get underneath everything. So
What about in general? Is it for any other project too?
often, yes. Yeah. So, so here we go. They wanted all of this in camera. So you see Roger in there. There is our Roger puppet, which we had to be able to perform with the door, with the bed up. This is all in one shot. We see him, and he turns over, and then Roger jumps out and takes the bed off.
So is someone in the bed when the bed is upright?
No, we built we took the foam version of Roger. We made a puppet version. We cut a big hole in the mattress. That's a Lycra sheet, and we pushed our Roger puppet up through the Lycra to be able to control it. And then we had all the things like little controls in the mattress to move the mattress around.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, and we had the pillow could move, and I guess this is just Bob with his brilliant acting.
Yeah.
Now this is an elastic rig that he's pulling on.
Okay.
So he can actually pull and pull and pull and pull and pull, and then he lets go. So he is actually pulling it. Whoa.
Wow. Was the man who was the mime coach, was he on set every day?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, after the initial the initial work, then it was just us puppeteers and working with Bob, and so. And again, most of these stunts Bob did, all of these.
Yeah.
So as I say, Stuart Fell doubled for the difficult ones, and so the big crashes. But Stuart was actually quite small, so he had a lot of padding in to fill up to look like Bob at the time. So yeah, so that's us holding the paper rig. So
Was there anything in the script that you had to change because you couldn't figure out?
No.
Look at that.
Yeah. So interesting. His jump and the paper is like all slightly different. So
Yeah.
But that's fine. That's what.
That's what makes it feel real.
Yeah.
Too. Where
Yeah.
you can like see that something is a little off.
Yeah.
When something's too perfect, that's when your eyes glaze over.
Yes. So we did all of this. We controlled this from underneath through the desk. He opens the cupboard, the drawer. That's all. So all of this stuff, all the things that he moves around, and moving the chair. Again, that's all us just rigging it all.
Wow.
So,
How long would a scene like this take?
well, it's no longer than most films. I mean, they take days, always days to film these sort of things, because they do the wide shots, they do the close-ups, and they relight for each version. So, so this would be quite a few days for all of it. But probably 2 or 3 days, and that will be that. So it's the closet stoop.
so many factors in this could go wrong. Like they maybe wouldn't have chemistry, or Roger.
Yeah,
is an original character. Who knows if he would work?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they had done a couple of animation tests.
Okay.
And so, oh yes, and then the handcuffs. So those are obviously just affixed to Bob's arm.
Yeah.
And so that he can move them around. So, but all the Bob chasing around, he's just doing that with mime. He's just doing the mimes. So.
Wild. Yeah, there were a lot of other people that they thought about.
Eddie Murphy was.
Eddie Murphy, Bill Murray, I think, was on there.
Yeah.
There was like a bunch of people, but I feel like no one could have
he was
done
supposed
it.
to be
He was
Eddie.
the man who was born to do this part.
Yeah, and we were doing the drawers there with him. So.
Yeah.
So and moving all the stuff they had all rigs to move all the stuff when he lands on the table that most people wouldn't even notice.
I've never noticed that he has a Betty Boop statue on his desk, which is weird because he knows Betty Boop.
Yeah.
It'd be like me having a statue of Brian on my desk.
Patrick?
Yeah.
And so, we had when the weasels try and get in through the door, there's a whole special effects rig to fire out the lock.
Oh, sure.
But then we had to come in with the weasel guns. And, of course, it's a closed door, and we needed to get the weasel guns through. So we had to do a very complicated string rig to have that weasel rifle to be able to come through a closed door.
Wow.
And then, so the front guns are on rods, and the rifle in the background is on strings. So...
Which one is easier, rods or strings? Or is it just, it depends on the situation?
It depends on the situation. Rods are more direct. You can be more specific. I think there's a rod when it pushes into his face. That will be a rod when he's pushes the gun into Bob's face.
Sure.
Strings are obviously, with a rod, you've got to be able to draw over the rod. So again, with this, the weasel Tommy gun there, that's a string as well, but this is now a rod. So it means he can push it into his face, which you wouldn't be able to do obviously with strings. It wouldn't have that force,
Of course.
and then we have one. So this is a hand puppet with an actual bar of soap and real bubbles.
Oh, wow.
They wanted real bubbles. I said, well, why don't you just animate them? No, that's actually... So there's a rubber version of the puppet with a rig in to blow out the... and that was puppeteered by Mike Quinn. So it's just like, wow. So yeah, we went to just crazy lengths to bring everything that you see move, everything rig. We had all of the stuff that moves.
What are
Now this is a mechanical one from the same sort of arm that was used for Roger when he first takes the shot of alcohol and bashes through the window in Maroon's office. So,
are you guys doing the water coming out of there, or is that a special effects?
That's effects.
Okay,
Yeah, that's effects.
okay.
But all the movement of the cuffs is Bob. He's working what he has to do with his wrist.
Oh.
And not looking at it, looking at Roger, but still doing all the movements. So now here we've got a combination of a big mechanical rig with cables, air compressed cables, mechanical cables, moving all this stuff under his jacket. So bladders and stuff. So and there's this big, huge train of cables and hoses coming out to a whole truck that's going along. Mm-hmm. This is just Mike Quinn with his hands reaching up underneath Bob. Here we now, that's Bob doing it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Bob's doing that part. So, and then back to the rig. So Bob did the push out.
Oh my gosh.
So just like so many tiny details.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so many people working together in different departments to make this happen, which is very impressive.
Yeah, so I think this is the secret room. Oh, yeah, this is the room where we weren't doing anything. And then he decides that Roger's going to go through a toolbox. Yeah.
Because the day was going too easy.
No, because it's just like it was overnight. Bob decided he wanted some something more interesting in the sequence. So this whole toolbox sequence was something that we found out the morning of and had to rig. So, and yes, I'm literally between Bob's legs, controlling the other end of the handcuff. And you can see it's moving around a little bit. It's adjusting a little bit. Then I drop it down. And then he sees it, and then I pick it back up. And so again, people wouldn't realize that I'm doing that with a special mechanical rod rig underneath. And again, just keeping it moving a little bit so you don't get too much skating. We did the chair, did the light. And then he ends up, I think it's in this sequence, he starts picking through the tools. So we've got the tools rigged. So that's the thing, we had like half an hour to rig his tools as he was looking at everything he was doing. So and then Bob cutting off the rest of the... So
that's
there
the
we go.
cheapest
That's
shot in the movie. Just Bob Hoskins. Sorry, no effect.
So yeah, him on the lamp, him moving the hammer. I think he's got a file. Oh yeah, taking that out of the box, taking the thing. Then he's so he had all these things you had to pick up and play around with. And wow. So.
Does that excite you though when he said, "Hey, guess what? We got more stuff for you"?
Yes.
It feels like it must be like okay, here we go.
Yeah. No, it's great. I mean, he did this. Bob did the same thing. Bob Zemeckis towards the end of the shoot when we were doing the discovery of the disappearing, reappearing ink. Mm-hmm. And there's basically Roger goes through, opens a box and takes it out, I think. Mm-hmm. And there we go. There's the file that we did. So had to work that out. So, but yeah, so disappearing, reappearing ink, and again, it was just a very simple. We just had, I think, a couple of boxes to open and lift the thing out, No, Bob Zemeckis had this whole sequence of he goes through this, he looks through this box, throws that away, opens this box. No, that's it. So, and it was this big long process, and he said, "Can we have it for after lunch?" So, and I think I go through my brain, rigging it all in my mind. So yeah, no, we can do that. So he said, "Well, no, if it's not possible, then I said, no, we'll have it done." So we worked through lunch, got it all ready, and it was flawless. We got every single bit, but of course they just used the last 2 seconds of it anyway. So
now all of Bob's back hair, that's a special effect, right?
Yes.
You guys did all that.
Puppeteer for each strain.
Puppeteer for each strain.
There was a big scene cut right before that, right, where he goes and Doom finds him and puts a pig head on his.
Yes,
and that's why he's coming out of the shower to watch.
Yeah. So they did a whole series of how to do that, and I think Val Charlton came up with a number of pig heads that was made out of candy floss, we would call it,
Oh, yeah.
candy sugar thing.
Yeah.
So it was really so that when
Cotton
you
candy?
cotton candy, yeah. So when you're in the shower, it would all melt and disappear.
Oh wow.
So, but some of the sugar got into Bob's eyes, and it hurts. So, but yeah.
So is that a body double there, or would that just? It's
No,
just miming him?
it's usually miming.
Yeah,
there was
okay.
a body double, but the size of her waist meant
Sure.
that most of the time the body double wasn't practical.
Yeah.
So he would just mime all of that for Jessica. And you notice her hands are very small, except when she actually grabs his tie when they actually do get bigger. So.
Who do you think is the best director to work for in terms of understanding what you guys do?
Wow, I mean, I've been very lucky.
You've been extremely
I've been
lucky.
extremely lucky because, I mean, Frank Oz, Jim Henson, Bob Zemeckis, even Terry Gilliam.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
really
Look at the
loved.
list you just.
I know.
Because
I know.
mean, Gilliam has a sort of a tendency to be quite the crazy guy, but he loved the puppetry and it was like really excellent. So, so I've just been really lucky with all the people, and I just Brian Levant, wonderful guy, and just really fun working with him.
And
really
you've done a few things with him, too.
Yes,
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've just been really lucky that I think pretty much everyone who's directed these things, I guess they do it because they love this style of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And so, if you hated it, if you were like a really, really serious sort of guy who didn't like puppets, then you probably wouldn't do something
That's
like
true.
this. So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, so I've been very lucky. And again, same with the stars. Bob was just amazing.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question about Little Shop of Horrors?
Yes, absolutely.
That was one of the movies that when I watched, I was like, well, this is what I want to do.
Right.
And I really analyzed it. And I also love the Muppets. I love puppets. Audrey, too, is one of the most expressive puppets. But it always threw me that it didn't have eyes. Yet it didn't need them because of how you puppet. What was the secret there? Because it was so expressive.
Well, a combination of... I think initially the design from Lyle Conway, but also Frank's knowledge of puppetry, of bringing an inanimate object to life and working out how to do that. Wow. And he was, Frank was amazing. And so was, Frank and Lyle are amazing. They created some of the best animatronics ever. Yet we spent a lot of time rehearsing and trying to get it right, So it took a very long time to film.
Sure.
Little Shop, and I think we went on record of doing about like 85 takes for one shot.
Oh wow!
And typically we'd be going around the 20-30 takes to get all the lip sync and everything synchronized because we were filming in slow motion and they sped the film up
So they were playing the song back slower.
So we actually
Rick Moranis is acting slow.
He's acting slow, and we're typically around about 16 frames a second, which is Feed Me Seymour. So it's a lot slower than the actual film that you see, and but that was the only way to get the sense of power and speed of the lip sync. With everyone going at 100%, we couldn't quite get there. So by slowing the audio down and performing to that and then speeding the film up, it just gave it this great life as well.
Oh, it looks alive. Absolutely.
What is the vibe on set when you're on take 60?
And the song's going super slow.
And everyone's going, sure, 23 was perfect, So, and I think that one, it was something like take 30 that they ended up using.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, the thing is, when you're doing this, when you walk away from the set, that's it. You pretty much don't get a chance to get back to do it. And it was really important that, again, I think for Frank, for Lyle, for everybody, that this was going to be something special. And it really is. I think Little Shop stands up to this day.
I think it's a perfect movie.
Yeah.
I truly do.
I do.
Which ending do you prefer?
I think I prefer the actual final release ending. I loved Richard Conway's work on the other ending,
the
original
so
ending.
It's
It's beautiful,
but
and
emotionally, you want Seymour to live.
yeah, that's the thing. It was a huge and just phenomenal piece of work. And in fact, I was early on, before Richard was involved, Lyle and Frank offered me that position to supervise the epilogue.
Oh, wow.
And I'd just come off of years and years of doing lots of supervising and building, and I said, no, I'd just like to be a puppeteer on this film. Can I just be a puppeteer? All right, okay. So I just fancied a change and just to focus on performance, and so I didn't. And at one point I thought, I turned down probably the best thing for my career. But then when it was cut, I was thinking, wow,
it worked out.
I kind of dodged a bullet there, because I mean, it didn't affect Richard Conway, because he was brilliant. He went on then to do Baron Munchausen after that.
Right.
So
When Audrey was at its biggest, how many puppeteers?
65.
Okay.
Is that every puppeteer in the UK?
Yes, and lots
and their friends.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, and quite a few puppeteers who claimed they were.
Yeah. Mike Edmonds is in this scene, right?
He is. He's a dear friend. We're still in good contact, and it's always wonderful seeing him when we do conventions, and he's got a great laugh. Another Londoner, so
yeah. Mike, who we mentioned earlier, because he was in Jabba's Tale.
In Jabba's Tale,
just as a reminder. Yeah,
and also worked with him first. He was the full body version of Aughra on Dark Crystal.
Oh yeah,
wow. And he's the bottom half of Christopher Lloyd in the scene.
And Ewoks and everything. He's an amazing performer.
Oh, and I love all his. I mean, but also a brilliant actor.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's the thing. He's done so many good acting roles as well. So, but yeah, no, he's just a really lovely human being too. So,
how do you enjoy doing conventions?
I love them.
You get to see all your friends. It's got to be nice.
That's one of the nice things. Again, I get to see people like Mike Edmonds, Toby Philpott,
Mike Quinn,
and so we get to spend time, and it's just so lovely meeting the fans as well, who just love this work that we did all those years ago. So, it's. I feel so privileged and lucky that I got to work on all these films. I mean, for me, a lot of it was just doing my best and working out problems and designing and building puppets, and then trying to get the best performances we could. And so that was just like the day-to-day thing. But looking back on it, I can't believe how lucky it was.
Of course, yeah.
You know,
how was it working with Frank Oz as a performer versus a director? Did he change at all when he became a director in terms of how he works, do you think?
I guess there was a slight difference for him and me, because we worked together on so many things. We worked together on Yoda, and then on Dark Crystal, and then Labyrinth as well. So when it was Little Shop of Horrors, he was obviously he was the director, which is a different role than a co-performer. So, but he as a person was very, very wonderful and supportive to everyone, and very much I would say a perfectionist. He always wanted everything as good as it could possibly be. Even particularly, we started that with Yoda. Sure. It really had to be. It was all about character. We had to find Yoda's character, and again, that's exactly what Frank did on Little Shop. He was finding the different stages and the different plants and the different mechanical builds of Audrey, and finding the best way of bringing those to life. So,
you also worked on something that one of my great life regrets. You did the Muppets at the Hollywood Bowl.
Yes.
Oh. And I did not fly out for it, and I'm very sad about that. What did you do on that show?
I was just one of the background guys. Yeah.
Who did you get to do, though?
Well, I worked with Sweetums.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And so I did the eye controls for Sweetums. And
that's amazing.
That was wonderful. With the brilliant Noel McNeil, who was he did Bear in the Big Blue House. He was inside the costume, and I got to do that, as well as various different background Muppets for the different sing-alongs on stage. So I think at one point they were going to have a certain amount of puppeteers, and then they decided to add maybe 6 more, and I was in that last 6.
That's
so
cool.
I got in just at the last. But it was such a joy. I mean, I couldn't believe I I've been to the Hollywood Bowl since. I will never see it the same. Having been backstage and looked out to the audience and seen all the dressing rooms and everything, it's
so rare that they do live shows like that.
Right.
Like to be a part of one of the, I don't know, I could count it on maybe one hand on how many like large scale live shows they have done.
So if you weren't there, you should regret it.
I do regret it. I'm
was
really
one of the
sad
most
about
magical
it.
evenings I've ever.
It was
participated in.
brilliant, actually. It really was. It was very well received, and everyone loved it. And I also got to do the O2 as well, which was in London. They went out to do the O2. So because I'd been part of the initial one, the Hollywood Bowl, they said, "Oh yeah, come out for that." So that was great.
Cool.
So I got to. They flew me out. I got to do that. Be on the O2 stage.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And then also I was able to catch up with friends and family while I was there. So it was like just amazing. I just felt again so lucky to be part of it.
Patrick, what did you do that weekend?
It's a great question. I think I was probably working. I did
man,
go to.
that's fun too.
Yeah, I know. I went to. They did a show at Carnegie Hall in like 2011, 2012,
I
something
heard that
like
wasn't
that.
very good.
Yeah, it was terrible. It was really, Mike wasn't there. It was bad. But it was Fraggles, it was Sesame, and it was Muppets.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And it wasn't filmed, and they could never do anything with it because it was like the legality of it all.
Oh,
They'd like all
right.
signed the contracts of being like, you can do this, you
This
can't do
never
that.
happened.
Yeah. But that was amazing. You're also big Fraggle Rock. You worked on Fraggle Rock a lot.
I did, yes. I was Sprocket the dog for all the European versions, and sometimes did Uncle Travelling Matt for the UK as well. I was shared Travelling Matt with Mike Quinn, and but yes, I was chief puppeteer for Sprocket for France, Germany, England, and then I provided all the dubs for all the international versions. I provided Sprocket's voice for those. So.
What haven't you worked on?
Give
Us a list of things that I like that you haven't worked on.
now this is in LA too. This bridge.
Yes,
Sure.
yeah, this is right
it's
here.
going into Atwater.
Yeah. No, this is all here. So, so again, I wasn't involved in this, and I think the effects guys had created the little car for Bob to drive, but he wasn't actually driving it. So.
It is amazing how much it matches. Like you can't tell that it goes
it's good.
London to LA.
Yes.
You're just like, no, they're in LA the entire time, you know?
Yes, and this is a cinema in Kent.
Oh, really?
So they found an old cinema that, and so popcorn everywhere. That's me again, shaking all the popcorn out.
His hand in that shot looked like a physical hand. I assume it wasn't, but maybe it was just the way it was lit.
No, there was a rod on it.
Yeah, it looked like a puppet hand, which is interesting.
But it was just a rod from below.
Yeah.
I think it was probably just me, I think, on this day.
Yeah.
Because all they needed was the popcorn, and then that was it. So.
And they obviously can't cut a hole in the ground here. So you're just lying on the
lying on the
floor.
Yeah, trying to not be seen. But that was it. So you always have a monitor. For all of these films in the UK, all the video was supplied by a guy called Ian Kelly.
Okay.
And he did Dark Crystal, he did all of these. And, of course, he did Little Shop of Horrors, where we needed masses and masses. He had a huge crew of people placing all the monitors for everybody, because, of course, none of us could actually see the plant. A lot of us were below the stage in what had been the tank that had been drained out. So all the puppeteers were below Audrey 2, because it just took so many puppeteers to control her or him.
You're obviously you seem very happy, and you're very, it seems like you're enjoying doing all of these things.
You appreciate
Absolutely,
You
yeah.
appreciate it in the moment. Is there ever a moment where you're lying on the ground in a movie theater and you go, what am I doing here? Does that ever happen?
I don't think so. I mean, I can think of the exact opposite when I'm going, can't believe I'm here. I'm so delighted.
Yeah.
I remembered on Cats and Dogs, the original Cats and Dogs, we'd just delivered the final puppet, and I'd worked around the clock for about 72 hours and through the weekend, and everyone was happy. And I was back in we had it wasn't a trailer, it was like a work truck. I was sat there in a chair and I fell asleep, and as I was falling asleep, because everything was going ahead, I was just thinking, I can't believe how lucky I am to be here. And this is in the middle of having just worked like 72 hours straight. So yeah, it's most of the time I'm trying to think if there is anything. There probably is somewhere.
I think that's a better way to live your life. It's
Yeah.
just being happy about it and being And I want to again plug this book because the photos in it are amazing. And there's a lot of great cats and dogs photos, and just like behind the scenes building these animatronics and working on these animatronics. It's so many photos I had never seen, obviously because they were your personal photos, but really, really cool stuff.
I mean, that was one of the things that I wanted to do because it seemed like, well, how can I tell the story and how can people really understand this crazy life? Because it is quite unique, I think. I mean, there are some friends of mine who have been on a similar path, but I don't think if you wanted to start doing my career now, it wouldn't be anything like the way I've been through it.
Yeah, no.
So, and I was very lucky. I was able to get approval from Lucasfilm for a number of photographs that have never been seen before.
Yeah.
They approved them to be published. So that's amazing. And then Frank Oz agreed, which he normally doesn't do because he doesn't like to show the behind the scenes pictures. That's just his particular personal taste.
Sure.
But he said no because it's me. He couldn't refuse, which was lovely. And then Mark Hamill as well, and Brendan Fraser. All these people were just so generous to say, "Oh, of course you can print the photos."
I was going to say the Hamill photo with you standing behind him with Yoda in the backpack.
Yes,
it's an amazing photo. And I was like, I'm so happy that it exists in the real world. I'm going to show it to Brian right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was just so lucky that, that was one of the bits of just pure luck in a way.
Oh, wow.
I came back to work on Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Jedi, and they said, right, you need to look after Yoda on set. And I said, okay, well, can I get some photographs of the continuity, I said, and how he looked on Empire, I said, because I've got a couple at home, I said, but it'd be good to get proper ones from the set. And so they said, all right, we'll get you over the contact books of everything from Empire. So I went through, and as I'm going through, I'm taking a list of photos that I wanted to have as reference for Yoda for reproducing him on Jedi. And I kept noticing these pictures. There's some pictures of me. So I wrote a separate list of those and put in my order for the pictures I wanted for looking after Yoda on the film. They all came through fine, and we did the film. And towards the end, when we were wrapping up, I went along to Pat Carr, who worked very closely with Robert Watts. I said, Pat, could I order some photographs for my own personal use? And she said, yes, of course you can, David. So, well, thank you. She said, but I'm afraid that the contact books are now back in California. I said, that's all right, I've got the numbers here.
Oh, wow.
So I gave her the numbers, thinking, nah, they'll never do that. Yeah. I think 2 weeks later, all those photos turned up. So that was the photos that Pat Carr and Robert Watts arranged for me to have.
That's amazing.
And so, and then other ones were photos that I took, which is, again, we weren't supposed to take any photos, but I brought in my 2.25-inch square neg camera. So
it's easier to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission, I think.
Wow.
Especially in that case.
But it has been over 40 years, so I made sure that it wasn't before then.
What were for Yoda? What were the changes between Empire and Jedi for the puppet? Was there anything that you guys improved upon? I assume the the animatronics inside maybe changed a little bit.
Slightly, yes. I mean, Stuart Freeborn made the original first Yoda, and then when that had some problems, a second Yoda was built, a backup Yoda, and so the backup Yoda was nicknamed Nick's Yoda because Nick Maley was the guy who sort of oversaw putting that Yoda together with Graham Freeborn, myself, Bob Keane, and Nick Dudman. So we all did that over like a 48-hour window. So the production had something to film on, and so that was so there were two Yoda versions there. When it got to Jedi, the Nick's Yoda was never used, but Stuart took his Yoda that he'd made on Empire and took it with him and was working on it, I think, through Superman 2 and through other films, doing little bits of work to try and get the eye mechanism to be more stable.
Okay.
And when we turned up, but the eyes wouldn't close properly, wouldn't fully close.
Oh, wow.
And of course, it's like, oh, we really need the eyes to close.
Famously, his eyes need to close in that movie.
Yeah. So, and Stuart said, "Oh, it's fine, isn't it?" Yeah. And so again, Robert Watts asked me to one weekend to go through and have a look, see if there's anything I could do. And I realised that he had connected two camera shutter cables together to push the eyes closed.
Oh wow!
So he would actually be pushing the mechanism which would push the lids. On Dark Crystal, the engineers did like a little rocker bar so that you would pull the bottom of it and it would push the top. So you could use a softer, lighter cable and pull the cable, and that would make the eyes blink. But with Yoda, it was a push.
Oh, wow.
And so, and then if there were problems, the push would get backed up a bit. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So very much it was the same sort of thing with Yoda on Jedi. I think his eyes were set a lot more in Empire. Certainly, Nick's Yoda was his eye focus was very much out and forward.
Okay.
Where on Jedi his eyes were more close, more into himself. So they wanted a different look. There was also the difference between Empire and Jedi. One of my earlier jobs in the build crew was to expand Yoda's foam latex head skin. And that meant putting it into a chemical mix of dinonyl phthalate and isopropyl alcohol, and that would expand the foam back to the original size, because foam latex typically shrinks about 7%.
Sure.
And so Stuart wanted it to be exact, so it would fit perfectly. Wow. So that's what we did. They forgot to do that on Jedi, because I wasn't there doing it at the time. I was working for Jim. So they put the skin on, and I said that to Graham Freeborn, and he said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "Oh, well, it might make him look a little bit older, you know." So
oh my gosh.
There's that very slight difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard for people to read? Like, even the Yoda in Last Jedi looks different.
Yes.
Why do you think it's so hard to recreate that? The original look, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, I've made I think what is a decent attempt as my own personal homage to Stuart Freeborn, and I think it's basically because I think there's really very few people alive who knew what went into building Yoda. I mean,
Sure.
I knew exactly how Yoda was made in Empire and Jedi.
Mm-hmm.
So, and at one point it looked like they might be asking me for episode 8 to
sure.
have some inputs, but in the end they didn't, and in the end I was busy, so that didn't happen. I think I probably, with my knowledge and knowing exactly what's inside Yoda,
totally.
I probably could have got him a couple of steps closer to the original. But again, did they expand the foam? Probably not. Again, the original Yoda, the one that we shot most on, was the backup Yoda, and Bob Keane assembled the mechanisms for that sort of overnight, I think, and he put basically Bowden cables, like brake cables, that were directly connected to the lid shells, and then you just push the cable, and that would close the eyes.
Sure.
But he did one for each eye. So he had 2 cables coming up to a little plate, and you'd push your thumb on the plate and it would push both cables down, and you could actually disconnect the 2 plates and do a wink if you wanted, but we never did. There was never a need for a wink.
Yoda never winks.
Never winks.
No.
Being sassy.
Yeah. But what it did mean is that if you rocked your thumb slightly left or right when you were pushing it down, one lid would slightly close more than the other.
Oh, okay.
Or open slightly more than the other. So there's a little bit of asymmetry there.
Huh.
And I think that really helps to make him look less mechanical.
Sure.
When you see some of the worst animatronics that you could have probably seen in the 80s, you get these mechanical faces that move all around, that have no expression. There's no emotion there. There's movement, but no performance. And then blink, 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 blink. It's like these eyes are like the shutters of a camera rather than somebody's eyes. So Yoda, I think, was the exact opposite of that. He wanted him to be really organic and to make feel that the eyes weren't mechanical, because they were the main mechanized part of Yoda.
Sure.
So if they'd look mechanical, then that wouldn't be good. So again, I think the way they built the mechanisms this time round probably didn't include that as well. And again, because they wouldn't know.
Sure.
They
of course,
wouldn't
they
know.
weren't there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you guys do a lot for this? Because this is primarily animated.
Yes, no, this is all Bob on a green screen, I think. So we didn't really do anything on all of this. So this was actually shot after we shot the film. I think this was all filmed in LA probably after we'd done all the studio work in London.
Huh. Here they are.
This is nuts that this happens.
The boys.
Yeah.
Were they nice on set?
They were great, yeah. I mean, how the head Warners and Disney agree, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think it's probably one of the reasons why they've never done a sequel.
I'm sure.
Because, I mean, I saw Kathy Kennedy in 99, and she said, we had the best script for the sequel.
Yeah.
I read it. It was great. It
You
was great.
really?
Yeah, I'll send you a link.
We'll send it to you. It is out there.
It's fantastic. Yeah.
Wow. And she said,
The
it's
Toon
really...
Patrol, I think that's what it's called. Right?
The Toon Platoon.
Toon Platoon.
Who
yeah.
discovered Roger Rabbit?
Oh wow! And she said it's really, really good. And she said just can't get it made. And because she said we definitely would have had you back on that. So it's like I would have loved that. Would have been a dream. So
you have gotten to do some Warner Brothers Looney Tunes stuff since then.
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Were you a Looney Tunes kid growing up? Did you watch any of that? Or?
I did a bit, but not as much because it wasn't as available on UK TV as it would have been here in the US. So we did get to see some of it, and I even, oddly enough, did a TV show called What's Up Doc, which was I think it was the Animaniacs was the main. It was a Warner Brothers TV show, and it was a live Saturday morning kids show in the UK. So I got to do a bit of that, and that was in like 94, 95.
Oh, wow.
So, but yeah, I got to work on Looney Tunes Back in Action.
Yeah.
With a wonderful Brendan Fraser. Just amazing.
The great Joe Dante, too.
And the great Joe Dante, And then
amazing
again,
Daffy Duck.
Daffy Duck, which was my dear friend Bruce Lanoyle.
Oh, yeah?
He's fun. And so he was so good. He was the puppeteer and did the voice on set. He was so good, he made the last two in the voices, but in the end, like, they decided on the other guy, which I think they shouldn't have done. I think they should have chosen Bruce. I think Bruce was, but they knew Bruce so well. They said, "Oh, yeah, no, I think we'll go with the other guy." So,
Wow.
he's a phenomenal voice artist and puppeteer.
Yeah,
and so worked with him. So that was lovely. And of course, Dean Cundy again, after who worked on this on Roger Rabbit.
What a wild career
that.
he's had too.
I know.
Just like from Halloween to Looney Tunes Back in Action is like an insane group of movies.
Yeah, it was. He was really lovely, and because we had hundreds and hundreds of strings in this film in Roger Rabbit, and it was his job to try and make sure that they weren't visible because you couldn't paint them out in the day.
Yeah.
They had to be. So he would try and light them out. So he'd light the object and not light the strings. And then his little trick, he would throw the focus either just in front or behind the object, which would then defocus the strings and they'd disappear. Typically, I think most people would want to focus the prop.
Yeah.
So, but he said, no, either behind or in front of it. And everyone initially wasn't sure, and suddenly they would all disappear. So
getting real nitty gritty, when you say strings, is it fishing wire? Is it like what is the string itself?
Typically, what we used on Roger Rabbit was a pre-stretched matte black Dacron, which is a fishing thread.
Yeah.
And it's really good because it is matte black, so you can't see it. Because typically people would either use monofilaments or steel wires, but they would all glow and they would shine on the camera. So they would go along and have to put matting spray or black matte paint on them. So it's like, no, this was silly. So long before then, I think Fuzz Fazakas, who was the genius radio control guy behind the Muppets and behind the Kermit on the bicycle in the original Muppet movie.
Emmett Otter rowing rowing the thing.
So he also loved marionettes, and so he was somebody who had developed that, and they had discovered that they actually had some special marionette threads wound for Muppets. Gudabrod, I think, was the brand, and they did a specifically matte black pre-stretched so that when you put the puppet on there, you're not getting bouncing out of it. So from that point onwards, we decided to use matte black Dacron on everything.
Okay.
So for all this stuff, so a lot of these rigs were. I mean, we did do full on steel, multi-strand steel cables as well, where we needed a lot of force.
Yeah.
But when it's just lightweight props, then
it really is
Matt's
amazing.
Black Dacron.
You never see it. It's really amazing. Like, it feels like in a lot of movies of this era, you're like, oh, okay, I see that there, I see that there. But this is one where he hid them so well.
Yeah.
And it's really impressive.
Yeah, it really is. And so much of that was all about sort of understanding the issues, and because I mean, it doesn't matter if the prop, let's say it's a weasel gun, that it's very slightly out of focus, because probably it wouldn't be in focus anyway. You'd focus on the weasel itself anyhow,
of course.
So rather than the prop, so it just it made so much difference. So. But yeah,
Patrick, watch this. Hey, speaking of strings, you worked on Team America.
I did.
Wow, look at that.
You like that? You like
that was
that
good.
segue?
That was good.
Thank you. What was that like?
Well, I was actually primarily I'd been working on a live version of Little Shop of Horrors. They had built a massive mechanical robot plant, and they decided they wanted to add some extra organic lip movement into it at the last minute. Wow. So they asked me along to come in and build that and be involved with that. So that was out New York way. And oh yes, this Roger in the toilet. My poor friends Jeff Felix and Toby Philpott spent all day doing that, and they were underneath, and they were absolutely soaked to the skin. Soaked to the skin. For Team America. So I was working on this Little Shop of Horrors, but my good friend Kevin Carlson, puppeteer, was puppet captain, and he said, "Well, we've got some few days available if you want to work on Team America." So I said, "Sure, yeah, I'd love to." So because I'd started off puppeteering string puppets when I was 4 with my parents, I was one of the marionettists, one of the people doing the marionette work on the film, so which was great fun. And but yes, I wasn't one of the core puppeteers on that. I just came in and filled in and had great fun.
That's great. I heard that was very hard for them because they were new to it. Trey and Matt were new to that kind of technology, so they were learning on the go.
Yeah, I mean they were ad-libbing everything. So the way the puppets were made, they were kind of reminiscent of the Thunderbirds with a lower lip that would open and close. And so they had a little lever that they could control that would make the lower lip open and close. So they did the voices live.
Wow.
So the scripts would change all the time. And they had teams of people, puppet riggers, restringing puppets to certain lengths for certain shots, because they were constantly wanting less strings or more strings, or it was this ongoing technical sort of challenge for everybody. It was crazy, but I guess they decided they didn't want to spend any money painting out strings, so they took the time to just to restring and repuppeteer stuff. So.
I mean, for that movie, you don't really need to paint it out.
Yeah,
like it works. It's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So. No, but it was good fun to be on there. And although, as I say, I only did a handful of days, the 2 days the behind-the-scenes documentary crew arrived, I was there.
Oh,
so I'm in the behind-the-scenes. Although some of the guys who were there, I think the entire movie, you don't see them at all. So it's like, I guess some of the people knew that I was. So there's one of our. Weasel guns, which had a special rig to make it spin and drop when it hit the ground. So,
is there a kind of puppetry that you don't think you're good at? Because it feels like you run the gamut on, electronic puppetry, hand puppetry, marionettes. Like, is there something that you're like, I've never been able to get that one to work?
I don't think so, no, because I mean, I got, when I was a kid, I went along to puppet festivals and saw all kinds of puppetry, like the traditional shadow puppetry around the world, the Javanese, and string puppets. And strings were initially the hardest things for me when I was a kid, because glove puppets are relatively straightforward for everyone, but the string puppets have a different thing. But I really got to enjoy those. So so it's I think it's really just applying character through the technique. And so that was the thing that I've certainly tried to do in my career, is use my experience of doing all the different types of puppetry and performances and use those to try and deliver the character.
Sure.
Because, I mean, that's what we tried to do. Every time we were doing one of these characters in Roger Rabbit, we tried to perform the prop that would be appropriate to the actual cartoon character. And we did. We spoke to Don Hahn, we spoke to Richard Williams, we spoke to everyone, and, of course, Bob Zemeckis, about how it should be moved. And so as soon as we found we knew we had the character, it was... made everything easier. So these, again, the laughing weasel gun, that would be us in the foreground on a rod. So and another weasel gun. So
when you read the script before you started shooting,
weasel gun.
was it very different from the final version, or?
I think the biggest difference was when he goes to Toontown.
Okay.
There was different stuff, and there was the pig head, and there was that sequence that got done. So yeah, I mean, just again tapping Bob on the clothes to integrate, make sure you know that it's there. So
it's such a tight script. I can't imagine
there's
a lot of room for that change.
Yeah, just pushing it into his shirt and all that sort of stuff, just to make sure that you know.
Now we're just watching.
I know.
Just watching.
Sorry.
Yeah,
It's so good.
Yeah, no, it is. Every shot is
this
just
part is so good. He's so great.
and he's just brilliant. Yeah.
It makes you wish he did more physical comedy stuff like that. You know, he's
Patrick,
but the first half of the tumble, and that's not Bob.
No.
That's Stuart Fell.
Oh wow,
doing that. So. And Stuart was brilliant. I mean, there was no face replacement, of course, so you have to make sure that you don't see his face, and if you do, it's just a blur. So
sure,
that's Stuart, I think. Yeah,
that shot's far enough away where
that's Stuart too.
Oh my gosh.
So
Eddie was only in the sequel script for like half a page. It was very
really?
sad. It made me
really?
sad. Yeah,
Oh
it was
wow.
a prequel, so they couldn't meet.
Oh,
just
sure.
yet.
Oh right,
Yeah,
okay.
But he did make a cameo.
That would have been great. So
Poor guys.
I'd love to. I'll be sad that I wouldn't be able to bring it all to life. So.
Yeah.
It's an amazing script. It really is.
What? You also worked on Dr. Dolittle.
I did not. No.
Oh, I thought you did.
Way to go, Patrick. I'm so sorry.
I thought you talked about it in the book. Maybe I'm going insane. I'm sorry.
I mentioned it briefly that we used some of the puppets left over from Dr. Dolittle.
That's what it was.
To have a meeting with Chris Defaria and Larry Guterman for Cats and Dogs.
I really messed up.
No, that's all right. Doesn't
But
matter.
you did work on Lost in Space.
I did work on Lost in Space.
I saved the podcast, Patrick, because you messed up.
Yes, I enjoyed that. It was great. It was. I wasn't sure about the script. The script was like confusing, and I thought the film was kind of confusing.
Yeah,
but
You worked on Blarp?
I worked. Yes, I worked on Blarp. I was controlling the servo face, which you never saw because it was all 100% replaced by computer animation.
Right.
But we puppeteered every shot, although I don't think any of us really thought it was going to stay in, because at that point things were being replaced by computer animation.
Yeah.
And actually the Jim Henson Creature Shop were just at that point ready to replace it themselves.
Oh,
So
did they do the animation?
they actually did the animation, and I joined them doing that. So I was one of the animators that animated Blorp. So I was I think the only person who worked on the puppeteer team, bringing him to life on set, and then in post-production animating him afterwards. So, I mean, I was before that, myself, Mike Quinn, and Karen Prell, we'd been headhunted by Ed Catmull to go and join the Pixar team. And I wasn't sure about it, and Mike and Karen wanted to go, so they went, and I didn't. So, but I was still very interested in computer animation. It's something that I wanted to learn and wanted to do. So, so this way, I was able to learn computer animation at the Jim Henson Creature Shop, and
you've made your own movie.
Yes,
You've done a CGI movie. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's based on one of my parents' original puppet plays called The Ice King. And The Ice King's servant is a guy called Maldrix, and that's the name of the film. It's an homage to them. I wanted to do a film to celebrate their wonderful original plays and their puppeteering. And it was going to have animatronics in it initially, but couldn't afford that. So I decided just to go to motion capture. And so I created my own real-time motion capture studio and built all the characters, built the computer stuff, and then created an 85-minute feature film motion capture all by myself.
Where can we watch this?
I couldn't get anyone to distribute it, so I'm not sure how I'm going to get it out there. It's just complete. It's taken me 15 years, so that's going to be my next sort of challenge. Really, is to see how I can see if there's any way that I can get it out there. And worst case, I'll just put it up on the web and people can just watch it. I mean, I'm never going to make my money back. It's never going to be possible. Of course. So, unfortunately, it would have been nice to. So.
But it's very impressive that you were able to do that. And it's like a real testament to your work ethic, you know?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, because I would typically work 16 hours a day, 7 days a week for months on end, because it was just me. It's like, yeah, of course. If I don't do that, then it's not going to get done. So
yeah.
Judge Doom, and of course
there he goes.
It's a special rig, and then there's he can go underneath, and there's a stunt double for doing some of that. And
now, did you guys
kill Christopher Lloyd?
Yeah, did you kill? Was this you or was this special effects?
This was special effects.
Okay.
Yeah, and this was interesting because it was
because it could have fallen under either. It feels
could have
like.
fallen under either, but what they did is that they used, and now this is animation.
Yes, yeah.
This is Go Motion, I think.
Yeah.
But the initial thing coming up, they had compressed air. And so when they had it pre-made into the spring, and when they put a small tube of high compressed air, it would flatten out. So this is real, that's real, that actually happened. This is real, that's real.
That actually happened is the funniest way to describe this scene.
And then now it's him with his painted on eyes, which is brilliant. So.
Ugh.
This was a big shock in the theater.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Opening night. Yeah,
I am sure.
Yeah. And again, just beautifully done. But again, they're having to move the eyes around because they're skating. Today, it would all be tracked, so you wouldn't have any of that stuff, you know.
But that's what makes it scary.
That's what makes it brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, so almost part of the technique of having to do this is what made it so successful. You know, so working with the limitations, that was the same with all the Star Wars stuff as well. You're working with the limitations. So
they brought Judge Doom back at Disneyland for Halloween.
Oh, did they?
Dipping the shoe.
Oh, really?
Yelling at people as they walk by.
They used to have this room was at MGM in Florida, and they had the steamroller, and you could go lie under the steamroller.
Oh, wow.
That's like a very early childhood memory for me. Is like sitting under that.
So weird that Christopher Lloyd with Zemeckis is Doc Brown, who's the warmest character in any movie.
Yeah.
And then the most evil character.
Yeah. With his special teeth and his makeup.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You also you worked on Muppet Christmas Carol and Treasure Island too?
I did, yes.
How was that going back after Jim had passed and Richard had been, like I'm sure it was a different energy on set. What was the biggest changes, do you think?
Well, of course, Jim wasn't there.
Yeah.
Frank was, which was great. Richard wasn't. So there was a different level. And it was a time to try and celebrate what Jim had created. And so Steve, as we all know, took over from Jim and was doing an amazing job. And I thought actually Brian Henson did a phenomenal job on it.
Yeah.
It was I think it was his probably first directorial debut, and he did a brilliant job. I think it's really one of my favourite Muppet films, and he did a superb job on it, and we all had great fun. I was on it every day that I wanted to be, so and which was great, which was every day that I could, so, which I was, and it was. I typically did things like the penguins and the rats and everything, but as you may know, that on a film like that, the main Muppeteers, the main Muppet performers, have more than one character. So if they've got two of their characters on screen at the same time, they will do the most important one, and someone will double for the other. And so that's what I did on all the Muppet projects. In fact, I think I've doubled for every single Muppet.
Wow.
From Kermit, which I did on Christmas Carol, to Piggy as well, and to Gonzo, and all the major Muppets. Had a wonderful time doing it. So, but again, the idea is that you perform in their style. It's not that you bring your version of the character to screen.
Their personality.
Yeah, you have to match their style. So so when I'm performing like Kermit, I'm trying to, again, just like Steve did, emulate Jim, emulate that original.
What's the rehearsal like for you then? If you know you're doing Kermit the next day, what do you do?
Usually in those situations, I find out just before I do it. Okay. So there was a sequence where in Scrooge's office, Bunsen and Beaker come up to the foreground, and Steve's doing Beaker because he's now taken over from Richard, and Kermit's is further in the background. So they said, "Oh, David, go and do Kermit." All right, okay. So I got to do Kermit, and he had one line, "Merry Christmas, Fred."
All right,
and so. So because we were running the whole scene, they wanted me to do that. So I got to do Kermit and say the line for him. And so and typically in films you'll do that. You'll say the lines and they'll record it. They'll put a microphone on you. On TV, you'll do it silently so that they don't have to try and remove you. That the other performers can dub you. Other than, I think there was a time when I was working on, I can't remember what it was now, but I was covering for Bill Barretta doing The Swedish Chef. And so he did the voice live and I just lip synced along to what he was saying. Wow. So
is that, how hard is that? Because you don't know what. No, I know, but he's making the movements now.
For the audience, yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, but you don't know what you're doing it. He's doing it. That's exciting.
Yeah, so I've done it for so long.
Yeah, you just get used to it.
My brain clicks in. Yeah. So and that's what I did. So I was able.
I thought you were showing me how you do it. And I was like, no, I know how you move them out.
I was actually lip syncing to every word you were saying. It was
very impressive. Yeah.
Yeah. So and I've done that for there's some TV shows where I had to cover for some friends. Yeah. So.
So is this on a wire rig here?
This is on a rod. Yeah, a wire rig. So.
Yeah. I wonder what all those personalities were like on the set with all the tunes on the same day.
Oh my gosh, so many guys.
It's a real clash.
They all had trailers too. That was the crazy thing.
And the trailers all talked.
Which of those puppets is the easiest to perform and which is the hardest? Like, is Piggy easier than, Gonzo or?
I think, again, a lot of the puppets are built specifically for the original puppeteer's hands. Kermit was built originally for Jim's hand, which was very large. And so for me, if I put my hand, it wouldn't look quite like Kermit. So I'd actually have to stretch my fingers out to fill that in because he was so flexible. And then I think Dave Gold's has got a slightly smaller wrist than me. So it's a little hard to get into Gonzo. And so... each one is unique and different. I think probably I enjoyed Kermit the most. Yeah. So
is he your favorite Muppet?
That's a good question. Is he my favorite Muppet? I guess he must be. Yeah. I guess he's got to be, hasn't he? Yeah, I mean, certainly just seeing Jim and Frank perform and ad-lib Kermit and Piggy was just... It was like watching one of the great double acts of the 20th century. Yeah. And they were absolutely phenomenal. And all the we had to do all the that was us doing all the bricks.
Yeah.
And it's like and as we're doing that, and it's Bob saying, "Oh, and I think he's going to walk through the bricks."
Oh my gosh!
Oh right, okay. We want the bricks to move. All right, okay. So,
are you under the bricks? Or are you above the bricks?
No, this is an actual real set.
Real set. Yeah.
So those were all multiple string rigs. So.
Wow. So I mean, so as we're wrapping up
Right.
this movie here, what are your takeaways from this movie? What do you think you learned while you were making it?
What I learned was I love doing my job. That not to be too nervous about trying stuff out, because we had to invent stuff that no one had ever done before, and that's the bit that I loved in the end. It was sort of coming up with new solutions and problem solving.
Yeah.
So I think I learned that trust your gut, enjoy it, and but also having the best team of puppeteers around me meant that I was completely supported. And also the visual effects, not the special effects guys, George Gibbs and Pete Davey and Brian Lentz, all the guys that I work with were also amazingly supportive. So it was, when it works as a big team, that's it worked really well. And that's what Bob Zemeckis did. He made everybody be part of this massive team. So and we all wanted it to be brilliant. So and I think it came out that way.
Oh,
so
yeah. It is. What's your favorite movie that you worked on to watch back?
Oh, to watch
Not
back.
even just your favorite movie in general. Are there anywhere you're like, I feel real good watching this one?
That's really interesting. Wow. Because I love them all, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I like watching this. It takes me back to the wonderful times that I worked on it. So, So I would say films that I really love.
I stumped him. This is good.
This is one of them.
Yeah.
This is one. Little Shop of Horrors is also another one.
Yeah.
Really is, because it's just so amazing. But I've watched Dark Crystal and Labyrinth recently, and they're amazing. I mean, it's like the further there's lovely Pat Carr.
Yeah. Also, Bob Yerkes.
Yes.
The stuntman who worked on Hop, Brian.
Oh,
Remember we talked about him.
That's
He was
wonderful.
Brian wrote a movie that Bob was a stunt coordinator on.
Right.
I wrote the other movie about a guy hanging out with a rabbit.
That's true. That is true.
And there he is. There's Ian Kelly, video assist technician. Yeah. Tony Dorr, sound. Yeah, he did all this. He was a brilliant sound guy. So worked with him on all the films. And there's all the senior special effects guys. Brian Lynch, Tony Dunstable, Terry Cox.
There he is.
Chief puppeteer David Allen Barclay. Puppeteer's Mike Barclay, my dad. So
Oh, I love that he got first under you.
What did he? Do you remember what he worked on specifically?
he worked on all the what are they? Penguin Waiters.
Oh, okay, yeah.
He worked on the Penguin Waiters, and just general days when we needed more puppeteers, when we had both units running at the same time. But it was great. It was great to be able to employ my dad, because I was making Planet of the Apes home movies when I was a teenager,
Right.
and I really wasn't focusing on my my studies and my exams. And he said, you will never get anywhere making those bloody ape films. And then he was so glad that because I had worked on those films as a teenager for myself, it was that work that got me to persuaded Stuart Freeborn to take me on.
Oh, wow.
So it's because of that I got to work on Star Wars, and then I got to employ him on the films. So he said he was
amazing.
really glad that I didn't listen to a word he said.
Yeah.
You know.
It's so nice that he got to see that.
Yes, absolutely.
Because you hear so often people tell stories where they're like, I wish my dad got to see me,
Right.
do the thing that I, got to be so good at. And
Yeah.
it's so nice that that happened for you.
Yeah. No, he was such a big supporter of everything I did. So that was wonderful. Yeah.
So many people worked on this movie.
Yeah. I mean, that's the
I'm not
thing.
even
It's
saying
crazy.
that as an exasperating. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like when we sit through all the credits for the movies that we do episodes for, it makes the movie mean more a little bit. Not that I don't watch the credits usually, but like you're like, yeah, there's hundreds and hundreds of people who did this.
Yeah. Exactly. And Ed Jones, for instance. So I worked with him since. So Scott was there during every single day while we were filming. He was in charge of second unit. So
Yeah. Chrissy England eventually ran ILM for a while too.
Yep. So, and just loads and loads and loads of people there. But of course, this was all back in California, and we were all still based in the UK for all of the work that we did.
Yeah.
I mean, all that studio work for Roger Rabbit, studio work for the Star Wars films, for the Henson films.
Yeah.
little shop that was at Pinewood, but most of this was shot at Elstree Studios,
Okay.
which was about a 15-minute drive for me. So
Wow, that's great.
it was perfect. Certainly when we were working the hours non-stop round the clock that we were from time to time. So
Where was Christmas Carol?
Christmas Carol was filmed at Shepperton,
Oh, okay.
which for me was about an hour's drive. But
Okay.
so that was fine. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think so was Lost in Space.
Mm-hmm.
So both over there.
Well, if
Yeah.
people made it this far, we should talk about Coyote versus Acme.
That's
Yes.
true. Yeah.
So you worked on that for the whole shoot.
The whole shoot, yes.
Will Forte was amazing, you said.
He was brilliant.
Yeah.
He's just absolutely wonderful, and the film is excellent. It's a real devastating. It was really devastating when I found out it wasn't going to be released. But yeah, so produced by Chris Tafaria, and I've done a number of films for Chris. But he called up saying that they were in early days. They were doing Wile E. Coyote, and he was going to sue Acme Corporation for all the failed products that he'd bought over the years, which is just like brilliant. So I thought, yeah, just the initial hook, I was there. And he said, but of course, as in the traditional Wile E. Coyote, he doesn't speak, so it's going to be a live action like Looney Tunes, like Roger Rabbit, with the cartoons added. But how are we going to integrate the characters into this film? How are we going to get Wile E. Coyote to interact with the actors? So you can't just do like a tennis ball, because there's no dialogue. I mean, with Roger Rabbit, we had the wonderful Charlie Fleischer ad-libbing and changing lines and being stupid and being there sometimes for initial reactions and everything, but would always run the lines offset live every time. So it wasn't like a playback or anything. So there was that energy. Well, how are we going to do that sort of thing for Wile E. Coyote, who doesn't speak? So I suggested a puppet. Chris only wanted just myself. He didn't want the whole team of puppeteers. So it's really just for reference. But so I decided I would build Wile with internal mechanisms that I could control with my right hand that held up the head. So I had mechanisms that made his cheeks frown and smile. And then another mechanism to make his eyebrows frown and go sad. So a combination of those two, I could make his face act, and then I could use all the typical puppeteering with the body action. So that's what I did, and I did that every single day for every shot on Coyote. Wow. And there were a couple of shots where, for instance, there's a lot of people in the background, and so I'd do my Coyote performance with Will and with Lana, and it was just excellent. And then I'd go out a shot, and they said, "Well, let's do another one without Dave." And then said, "No, get Dave back in." It's the actors are so much better when I'm there, when actually Coyote is there. They do a good job of trying to find the eye lines, but it's not the same. So, and fortunately, the visual effects producer George Murphy, he said no. It's going to cost me a lot more money, but it's much better when you're in shot, Dave.
Yeah.
He was a big supporter of the puppetry, and he was a big supporter of it. Unlike some visual effects supervisors who just really don't want to spend the money, probably because they're hemmed into a budget that they can't afford anyway. Yeah. But no, George was brilliant, and then with Keith Roberts, who was the animation director, who was doing amazing stuff. So yeah, it's a fantastic film, and hopefully someday
I think it'll come out somehow.
I
think it will. Someone will put it somewhere, and it will end up somewhere. That is my thought.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, I haven't actually seen it yet, so I've seen a lot of the cuts and I've seen a lot of the rushes. Yeah, but I haven't actually seen the absolute final completed film. But it's, from what I saw, it was brilliant.
The people I know who have seen it really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
so I think that means a lot. You know. Well, thank you so much.
This was an amazing time.
It was amazing.
Well, thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Who did you like better, do you think?
Oh, yeah.
He's not answering. He hasn't want to hurt Patrick's feelings.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye. Goodbye.
I mean, this is the best movie.
It is one of the best movies ever made. We say it a lot on the episode, but it is perfect on every level. Like it's every aspect of it is done as well as the movie can be done. Yeah. It's great.
Everyone firing on all cylinders.
Everyone firing on all cylinders.
At the height of their powers.
At the height Wait, okay, you just said that. But yeah,
I hope
totally.
you guys enjoyed it.
I did. I enjoyed it. If I'm part of the people that you hope enjoyed it,
Yes.
I got good news for you.
A really cool guy who's worked on like almost everything that everyone loves, you know? And I'm just happy that he's nice, and I'm happy that he's down to talk about this stuff.
He is super nice.
When a lot of people who work on these things and talk about it so much get a little tired of talking about it.
Sure.
I asked him before, I said, is there anything you want us to avoid? Is there anything you're sick of talking about? And he was like, not really. Had a great time on everything.
Turns out Cool World, one of the things
It's true.
we shouldn't talk about.
True.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for listening, and tune in next week because we have a really fun episode.
Oh, yeah, it's great. It's really funny.
Do you want to say who it is?
Oh, of course. It's let's just surprise people. And then they go, oh, they finally got Cameron Crowe.
Okay. All right.
It's
That's
exciting.
a good plan.
And we finally, well, let's not say who it is. But if you're a fan of Cameron Crowe, you're going to be so excited.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening to Hey That's Me, Commentary Podcast. This has been a That Was Just So Funny production. Your hosts have been Brian Lynch and Patrick Hotner. Music was by Alex Peabody, and our art was by Abigail Noy. You can find out more about the show by going to heythat'smepod.com and checking out our Patreon at patreon.com/commentary. The show was recorded by Stephen Ray Morris. If you've enjoyed the show, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Please tell your friends about this show.